Hello, welcome to Spirit of Life. I'm David McLauchlan, and my guest is Brother David O'Brien from the Salesians of Don Bosco Order. Hello, David. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yep, good.
So first of all, can you tell us a bit about your faith journey and how you became a brother with the Salesian Order?
So I was born in 1958 in Koroit, oldest of seven. My father was a butter maker and my mother worked from home. And basically brought up in the Catholic faith and went to Mass each Sunday and everything like that. And but we shifted around a lot. We moved to a few different places because of Dad's work and so forth. And so I went to a few different primary schools, both Catholic and state schools, and I ended up in secondary school going to a technical school. I left secondary school after Form 3, which is Year 9, I think, nowadays, and got a job on the railways as a trainee train driver, which was exciting. I enjoyed that. After about 4 years, I left the railways and worked at a lay community not far from where I lived, where there was a Salesian priest and several lay people. And during that time, I actually got to go overseas and to see the Salesians work in Italy, France, Spain, Portugal. I worked in England for 3 months and in Ireland for 2 months. In England, I worked with another lay community. And in Ireland, I worked with the roving retreat team. And when I got back, I wanted to join up, but I was told, wait 12 months. And I did and joined up after that. And so, and I always think people say, did you grow up wanting to be a brother? And when I grew up, when people asked me what I wanted to be, I said, a fireman or a train driver or a whatever, and maybe a priest, but I never really said anything about brothers because I probably didn't know much about them.
So what prompted you to become a brother?
Rather than a priest? It's a very good question. I keep getting asked that, and there's several reasons. One is because Don Bosco started the Salesians. Initially, he wanted the Salesians to be a lay movement, and then he said, "Oh, well, okay, let's just have brothers." And then he was kind of talked into making it a clerical order with brothers being part of it. So he liked the idea of the brothers and pushed the brothers fairly hard. So I was of the opinion that if Don Bosco liked the brothers so much that, I'd be a brother rather than a priest, yeah. That's one reason, yeah.
Are there more brothers or priests?
There are more priests, yeah. There's only, in fact, we've got a brothers conference coming up, and there's about 7 of us, I think, out of about 60, yeah.
And what year was it that Don Bosco?
Don Bosco was born in 1818 and died in 1888.
Oh, right.
So, yeah, he was around that long and founded the Salesians probably around about 1868 or thereabouts, yeah.
So generally, what do the Salesians do?
All right. Well, the Salesians' work or mission, if you like, is to work with youth. And not just sort of work alongside or with, but with and for, and with the mission being with the youth in work, with the youth as a focus. So, and that can be done in various ways. That can be parish, that can be school, that can be youth centre, that can be hostel, that can be myriad of works, anything to do. And Don Bosco's big thing was not so much to work with youth in trouble, although that was an important part, but to try and prevent them from getting into trouble. So setting up things whereby they don't get into trouble, that they have another way of looking at things, that they don't end up fighting or stealing or doing stuff. Yeah.
Did that include things like football clubs and stuff?
Yeah, that was part. Yeah, definitely. they had, and they still do, have various sporting facilities, sporting clubs, and so on. Yes, yeah.
Are they teachers as well?
Yes. Quite a few are teachers. When I joined, I didn't want to be teaching, but most of my contemporaries in my year, in my novitiate, pre-novitiate and novitiate, were teachers, and so teaching was a fairly big part of things. Yeah.
So what was your main focus when
My
you
main
joined?
focus was working in youth centres and hostels and that type of thing. Yeah, and I did a bit of administration at our retreat centre for a while. So yeah, they were my main areas. Yeah.
So how long have you been a brother, David? And apart from working in youth centres, what else have you done as part of Salesian, being
All
a
right.
Salesian?
Well, I've been a brother for just over 40 years. I made my first profession 40 years ago, and I've been involved for probably about 45 years thereabouts as a brother. Yeah. At the moment, I'm unable to do a lot of the stuff that I have done in the past, and working in youth centres and so on, because I've had a minor stroke and a few other health issues. So at the moment, I'm working a bit outside of what I'd normally do, and so that means that I had to reinvent myself a little bit a couple of years ago when I found I had the stroke and so on. So what I've been doing, interestingly enough, is a few things just outside of what I normally do. So making cushions for people who have open heart surgery. They need a cushion to hold because they're cut right through and so on. And for dementia people, so that's one job. But the other area that I've been working in is media, and particularly in terms of community radio. And I've been doing that for nearly 20 years. So even before I had the stroke and so on, I'd been working in community radio on a part-time situation. Now I'm probably, even though I'm not doing as much, I'm probably more involved. Yeah.
On that note, we need to take a break.
Sure.
You're watching Spirit of Life. Join us again after the break. Hello, welcome back to Spirit of Life. I'm David McLauchlan, and my guest is Brother David O'Brien from the Salesians of Don Bosco. Welcome back to the program, David.
Thank you.
Before the break, we were talking, you mentioned your involvement over the last 20 years with community radio.
That's right.
How
yes.
did you get involved in that, and what did you do as part of that?
All right. So how I got involved many years ago when I was working at another place, I was asked if I would go in and do a little promo for an open day that we had. And I got there early, and what I was waiting to go on air, to be interviewed on air, the DJ, the radio person, invited me in to watch him as before the interview, and I was mesmerised, basically, mesmerised with how he did things and working on this and that, fiddling around with things and that type of thing, and how relaxed he was and how welcoming he was. And that got me sort of thinking, and it wasn't until many years later that I had the opportunity to actually become involved. In fact, I was working at our retreat centre at Listerfield, and got sort of thought of thinking about it, and where will I go? And I rang a couple of community stations. One of them just wanted me to come in and do the football, and that wasn't really for me. I wanted to be a bit broader. I wanted to actually do music, because I love music, and particularly 70s rock and folk music, and I was involved a bit in the folk scene at that time, so I wanted to do perhaps a folk music show, and I contacted Radio Eastern, which is in Croydon, and they suggested that I do a training program. Everyone has to do a training program, and so I got involved and did 2 weeks, I think it was, training program, and then was mentored by one of the DJs, who happened to be an O'Brien, Peter O'Brien, and he got me going, and I ended up getting a program, and I think it was Monday night. It was Monday night, 10 till midnight, so the graveyard shift almost, and I really enjoyed it, and I brought CDs and kept bringing them in, and it was great. It was fantastic. Yeah.
So how did you put your faith and your background as a Salesian into your work with community radio?
Yeah. Well, actually, I think I jumped the gun, because I actually did a couple of programs in Sydney when I was in Sydney. So I started in Sydney and then came across. The show that I did in Sydney, the first show that I ever did for probably 5 or 6 months, was a youth-centred show. So what happened was, I came in, I did the show, and the CDs, the local record shop, which they had back in those days, and went, actually, that shop stayed open. I was there in the early 90s, and it was still open in the mid-2000s. It only closed about maybe 2-3 years ago, and it only closed because the guy that was running it got dementia and had to pull out. But they would get CDs that are like, what would you call it, like preview CDs. Mm-hmm. So they would get a CD which would have 10 tracks on it, different people, but it was a preview. So a group was having a CD coming out, an album coming out next week or next month or whatever it was. So they'd send a preview in. So this CD had about 10 previews of different bands and different albums, which just suited me, because then I could just play one CD all the way through, play 10 tracks off the CD. So that was good. And they were all young people's songs. And I got other CDs as well that I'd get from the shop, and just play them on the radio and just talk about them and find out a bit about them. And if I could get in touch with the people that were young, the young people that were singing, maybe I could interview them and different things like that, and just talk about maybe their shows that were coming up or that type of thing. Yeah.
So it was more you led by example in your faith, rather than focusing on interviewing people of faith and
that's
and
right.
Such.
It wasn't until later on, ironically, in the same radio station, because I'd come down to Victoria and I worked at Radio East, and then I went to Northwest FM in Hadfield, Glenroy, and worked there. But it wasn't until I came back to WOW FM in Sydney that I had an actual, what would you call it, religious program. And that I did that actually with I work with someone now, still doing radio. I ring from Sydney and I ring from Melbourne and he's in Sydney. But I worked with him for a few years, and we worked on this program. What was it called? I've forgotten what it was called in there. But we did a lot of gospel music, and we did a lot of. We would read the Sunday Gospel, and we would do a little homily and a little talk about it and that type of thing. That was it would have been 3-4 years ago that I did that. Yeah, kept that up. Yeah.
On that note, we need to go for a break.
Okay.
You've been watching Spirit of Life. Join us again after this break. Hello, welcome back to Spirit of Life. I'm David McLauchlan, and my guest is Brother David O'Brien.
Hi.
Welcome back to the program, David.
Okay.
So you were talking about your involvement in community radio media. Why do you think the media is important for people of faith to be involved in?
All right. Well, there are a couple of reasons. One is that, as we stated before, I'm a brother rather than a priest. And I sometimes think at Mass and that, when I hear a priest's homily, that I think I could do better. But I don't have a chance to do that because the priest's area is as well as saying the Mass and the sacrifice of the Mass and so on, and their area is giving a homily, is passing on a spiritual reflection or something that they see in the gospel that they want to pass on. I also think that I may not have a lot of theology behind me, but I have a little bit, and I have an idea of what the Gospels are about and that type of thing. So sometimes I want to share what I think is in that Gospel, and one way to share it for me is using the media to share the message of the Gospel, what's behind what Jesus is saying to us, and the story that Jesus has for us, his saving thing that he does for us. And so in order to share that, I'd like to I'm not short of talking or anything like that. I'm a bit of a talker and a bit of a storyteller. I think Jesus was a storyteller too. And interestingly enough, Don Bosco in his time used what was then media, which was the printed. He actually brought a printing press for the boys to use at the school that he was operating, and printed a lot. I think there was over 100 pamphlets and booklets and different things that Don Bosco printed getting the boys to help him and so on, and circulating them out as far as he could. And he took his thing from St. Francis de Sales, who the Salesians are named after, St. Francis de Sales, who was also is the patron saint of journalists. So they used their journal, their media of those days. Today we're into different media. We're into radio, we're into television, we're into the internet, we're into a whole lot of different things. So the more we can use these things to pass the message on to people, particularly young people, the better, because young people probably don't read newspapers or periodicals or all that much, but they will look at the internet and they will listen to radio from time to time and watch television. So yeah, those things I feel are important to pass the message on. Yeah, for me.
Do you think it's a challenge to reach young people through the media today?
It is, yes, very much so, because there are so many other things, things like Facebook and YouTube and all of those things that young people will look at. But what we've got to think of, is there another option that we can put forward for them to look at? I mean, we can use Facebook, we can use YouTube, we can use those platforms, but are there other platforms that we can put forward that they can look at to give them a positive look at things. Yeah. So
I think also using YouTube particularly,
yeah,
and producing programs of Christian content, is a very powerful way, I think, of reaching people.
100% agree. Yes, definitely. Yeah. And and if I think it's your imagination. You're only stopped by imagination. Your imagination can bring forth these things. And we can look at hundreds of examples of good stuff that's around. Yeah.
Another thing you've been involved with is the Religious Against
Human Trafficking. ACRAF, Australian Religious Against the Trafficking of Humans. Yes, and I've been involved with that for something like 6 or 7 years. Actually, what got me involved in that was I did a sabbatical in New Mexico, and when we did a justice segment in that, and one of the things that the person who led that or facilitated that was, he said, we mustn't just talk about justice, we must be seen to do justice. And that got me thinking. I thought when I did it in New Mexico, in America, in the United States, and I thought when I come home, I've got to get involved in something, so to do justice. And my initial reaction was, maybe I'll do something for refugees. But there was another person on that sabbatical who had been involved in ACRAF, and her talking about it got me thinking maybe that's a way to move. So that's where I ended up going to that area, and it's been quite an interesting journey, to learn. People think that human trafficking and slavery is that the involvement, and people think that human trafficking, slavery doesn't exist, but it exists in more places than we realise. Yeah, and what ACRAF are trying to do is to get it off, get it out, get rid of it, get it. Everyone